Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here. Welcome to the month of November, and I'm bringing you guys an old school album review, another new discography. Well, I've reviewed most of their albums, but I want to try to review the ones that I haven't. And it's from one of my favorite bands, and it's leading up to their new album, which comes out on the 20th. And yeah, we're gonna cover up all their albums. There were ones like I mentioned before, the ones I haven't covered, but I'm getting way off track. Steve out today. We're gonna be looking into Skydancer by Dark Tranquillity, the band's debut album released in 1993. Now, for those of you who probably don't know who Dark Tranquillity are, I feel like Dark Tranquillity are like one of my all time favorite bands, and they're probably much one of the big bands in the whole Gothenburg melodic death metal scene, or the Gothenburg sound, with bands such as like At the Gates, Old in Flames, and Soilwork. And I feel like melodic death metal, I feel like sort of like takes like the like sort of like just traditional like Tampa death metal, like Cannibal Corpse or Death, and mixing it in with sort of like Swedish kind of like folk music with sort of like hints of like the early like new wave of British heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and thus we have melodic death metal. And I feel like it's really influential. Without that, we wouldn't have the first wave of metalcore which comes out, which they pretty much influenced those bands like Killswitch Engage and As I Lay Dying and bands like that. But yeah, I'm getting way off track. Dark Tranquillity. Now, let's get a little back history for those of you who don't know who they are. They formed in 1989 in Gothenburg, Sweden, and then it was formed by then guitarist Michael Stan, who would later become their vocalist, and Nicholas Sundin, and they were originally called Septic Broiler, and then they added Anders Frieden, then who would later be on In Flames, but he actually sang on this album while Michael Stan, he actually sang on the first In Flames album, and then they switched, which is funny, and then they got drummer Anders Givarp, and their other member Martin Henriksson, and then they recorded a demo in 1990 called Enfeebled Earth, but then they changed the name to Dark Tranquillity, which has a little bit more of a thrash metal influence style on death metal, which is noticeable in like early Death. And then they released a couple other demos like Trial of Life Decayed in 91 and A Moonclad Reflection in 92. Oh, and then they of course got signed, and then in 1993 they released a Skydancer, and I have like a different version. It also has their EP of Chaos and Eternal Night, which is their first recording with Michael Stan on the vocals. Um, but yeah, I'm just rambling on for way too long, so let's just dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Nightfall by The Shore of Time. Which kind of gets the first hint of like Anders' vocal styles, as he just at the beginning of it just screams Nightfall, and then the whole band comes in, and the vocals continue at just a very fast paced, and I feel like the classic Dark Tranquillity riffing is still there. It has like rapid changes at like a bunch of different riffs, and then things slow down only to speed up like a little bit later. And it pretty much shows their death metal roots. While it's not much as melody is in there, it's there, and there's like a really nice acoustic riff, especially around the 2 minute mark. And it's a really cool song. It feels like it's nice and different than what we're experience later releases. Crimson Winds, which opens up with a great riff which is catchy, and it continues up until about a minute 15, and then Anders just has some really fast paced vocals, and it just speeds everything up, and then has another great riff that comes in behind like Anders' vocals in the verses. And this song is pretty much about pace, has some nice guitar solo and discontinues afterwards, and Anders shows some really great emotion to his voice, especially towards the end of the song. Next song is called A Bolt of Blazing Gold, which is pretty much the longest song on this CD. Has a nice acoustic guitar work, and then electric guitars come in around a minute and then the vocals just rip through, and then Anders screams really fast, and it's just really sick. And I feel like Dark Tranquillity is starting to switch to the melodic death metal style here, with sort of like slower, more melodic riffing and acoustic work. And then there's also some female vocals come here performed by a lady called Anacasia Avho, and it really adds like a nice emotional on top of like Anders' harsh death growls, and sort of like it blends together. And this song pretty much closes the same way as it has a sort of nice acoustic guitar work. Then we go into the next two songs, being In Tears Bereaved and Skywards, which pretty much turns the pace back up with some fast thing, and it's just some great vocals, and the pace just never gets up. It's quite a change from what we've heard, like I said, like from Dark Tranquillity's more recent works, where I feel like it takes their time and plays a lot of like changing. And I feel like the riffs here are constantly changing. It's pretty much a headbanger's dream, and the speed is perfect through it. Next song on the album is called Through Ebony Archways, and this song, from what we've heard so far, is quite different from what we've heard. And this song is like 90% acoustic, and with the scream vocals are pretty much about a minute of this song. And this is pretty much the first glimpse of actually Michael Stan actually doing some backup vocals, but he does like more the clean vocals. It's just really deep. It's just overlapped, sort of like a female vocalist singing about life and death, and it's just a very emotional piece. And this is probably one of Dark Tranquillity's sort of like best ballads, if you can call it that. Shadow duet, and you could pretty much see like Anders and Mikkel sort of like duke it out for the mic, and you hear Anders screaming along with Michael's clean vocals and his screaming voice. And I feel like the vocals really just great, and just some really fast paced action, just like 7 minutes of just pure awesomeness. My Fairy Tale Forgot, and it pretty much has a really crushing riff to start it off, but then I feel like kind of similar to like Skyward's left off, the vocals come in at a really great pace, and I think it works best for Anders. And then Alone, and this is like the farewell track for Skydancer, and sort of like Anders like stay with Dark Tranquillity. And if you're, it feels like has a pretty much a sad tone to it, and if you're looking for a sad song, this is it. And the title says it all, with lyrics feeling like being lost in life and all alone, and the riffing is just very melancholic, like it's pretty much an example of how you end the CD. And then of course my version right here has the of Chaos and Eternal Nights, which they released like 2 years later in 1995. So let's just talk about that. We'll just go right into of Chaos and Eternal Nights, the song itself. Now it just kicks it right in, picking up with the footsteps of Anders. Michael just starts off with some ferocious fast vocals, and his rappy speed kind of like voice takes over before a break into like awesome riffing in the chorus. So I feel like Mikkel sort of like filled in those shoes perfectly that Anders has. His vocals are a little bit different from Anders. I feel like Mikkel's voice has a bit more of a raspier kind of tone to it, which makes it very unique. And again, this song is just pure anger and just hatred, and it's a great song. With the Flaming Chains of Fall, now this is pretty much where it slows down a little bit. It's slower, but still kind of like techy, and has a catchy riffing. And I feel like the song lyrically talks about the fall, and it's sort of like describing it with sort of like underlying darkness. And I feel like, and you could definitely tell with the song, it talks about each month, like September, October, November. But great song. Away, Delight Away, which begins with just some very fast riffs, and this song just continues in such a fashion only Dark Tranquillity can do, with sort of like speeding riffs coming in like the first verse, and like the middle, Michael lets out some sort of like whispering passages before continuing on just another faster pace, and then the great riff returns one last time, and then it closes out the song. And then we close things off with this version of this album with Alone 94, which is a re-recording of the Skydancer's version, and it's pretty much awesome. So I mean, I honestly prefer this version. I feel like it's a benchmark for a sad song. It's just pretty much written perfectly, and it's just a very emotional piece. Now overall, Skydancer by Dark Tranquillity, or also of Chaos and Eternal Night, is some pretty great way to kick off the career of this band. So if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give this a solid 9 out of 10. Well, for both of these actually, so it's like a 2-in-1. So yeah, that's my review of Skydancer and of Chaos and Eternal Night, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next one. And as always, keep it metal.